The Roma Wine Company of Fresno, California presents Suspense. Tonight, Roma Wines bring you the suspenseful play called My Own Murderer, starring Mr. Herbert Marshall. Suspense is presented for your enjoyment by Roma Wines. That's R-O-M-A, Roma Wines. Those excellent California wines that can add so much pleasantness to the way you live, to your happiness in entertaining guests, to your enjoyment of everyday meals. Yes, right now a glassful would be very pleasant, as Roma Wines bring you a remarkable tale of suspense. And with the drama called My Own Murderer, and with the performance of Mr. Herbert Marshall, Roma Wines hope indeed to keep you in suspense.
I was never really much attracted by Alan Rennick, even before he murdered Baines. It had been a raw March day, and I returned home at about 11:30 in the evening to find Alan Rennick waiting on my doorstep.
Hello, Dick.
Alan, what on earth are you doing here?
It's a long story, old boy. Aren't you going to ask me? Is it your habit to keep people waiting on your threshold?
Well, give me a chance. After you.
I say, this is cozy.
Just about right for a bachelor who never entertains. I dare say it wouldn't do for you at all.
I wouldn't be too sure of that. Just one bedroom?
There's a spare, but I've never used it.
Not very hospitable, are you, old trout?
I never had any occasion to be.
Well, you have now.
What's in your mind, Alan?
I'm coming to that. You remember Baines, my butler and valet?
Vaguely.
Well, Baines turned out a bad penny. Tried to blackmail me, as a matter of fact.
Blackmail?
Yes, he got hold of some letters written to me by a lady.
A married lady?
You guessed it. Since you're my legal advisor, you may as well know the whole story. They were from Anita Kilner.
So you bolted, warned her, and put the police on him.
The police? No, I couldn't afford to do that. One couldn't very well produce Anita's letters.
Then you paid Baines the blackmail he wanted?
Certainly not.
Then what?
I'm afraid I lost my temper.
Good Lord, you don't mean to say there was violence.
Of course there was. You don't think I could let a reptile like that go on living?
Let me get this straight. Are you trying to tell me that you...
I beat his brains out. With a poker.
You murdered him?
I suppose that's what the police would call it. Happened this afternoon, around 3 o'clock, I think.
I don't have known sooner. Probably too late now to fix up an alibi for you.
You'll think up something, won't you, Dick? You always do when I'm in a jam. And in the meantime, I can hide out here, can't I?
What possible good will that do? They'll track you down here sooner or later, and then we'll both be in the soup. No, Alan, no, you better give yourself up. Then I'll see what can be done about getting you off. Perhaps we could muss you up a bit and plead self-defense.
Huh. Is that the best your devious legal mind can dream up?
At the moment, yes. I'm a little tired.
Well, I'm not going to cooperate. I'm going to stay right here till you figure out a way to get me clear of this.
Alan, be reasonable. For your own good. Give yourself up.
Is it my own good you're thinking of? Or is it because you're afraid you'll be caught harboring a criminal and lose your filthy law practice?
That settles it.
What are you doing?
Telephoning the police.
Put that phone down.
It's best this way, believe me, Alan.
I've already committed one murder this evening. I've nothing to lose by committing another.
Sorry, wrong number.
You're really afraid of me, aren't you?
Now, perhaps. Tomorrow I could turn you in with no risk whatsoever. But I don't think I will.
There's a good fellow.
I'll let you stay here, Alan. I'll save your neck for you, too.
Why this sudden change of heart?
You've always thought me rather a worm, haven't you, Alan?
Oh, I say, Dick, old boy.
You were the dashing man about town with your escapades and your lordly extravagances and your women running after you. I was just a dull fellow trapped in a musty law office. Now your very life depends on me. I suppose that's why the situation appeals to me. It's an adventure, if you like.
Well, I don't.
I just say not. It won't be pleasant for you cooped up in this little flat with no one but me to talk to.
Well, after all, it's only temporary.
You may not like some aspects of it, even for a little while. You'll have to do your own laundry, of course.
I say.
Checking laundries is a favorite police trick. And no lights must be turned on in the flat when I'm not at home.
You mean I've got to sit here in the dark?
You can go into the kitchen or the bathroom. There are no outside windows in those rooms. Oh, and talking of the kitchen, I think you ought to have your meals there. Even when I'm in. You'll serve me in the dining room.
Look here, do you think I'm your servant or what?
As a matter of fact, it's only fair you should be. Since I can't hire any help so long as you're here.
Well, wouldn't it be simpler and more matey if we both dined in the kitchen?
I'm not used to dining in the kitchen.
Neither am I.
Then the sooner you practice, the better. The future's not going to be so simple for you as the past has been, Alan. But after all, you're very lucky to have a future at all. Eh?
Well, Dick, whatever it is, one thing is certain. I'll have you to thank for it. But I warn you, Dick. If I do hang, it won't be only for Bain's murder, but for yours as well.
For Suspense, Roma Wines are bringing you as star Mr. Herbert Marshall, as Richard Sampson, with Norman Lloyd as Alan Rainick in My Own Murderer by Richard Hull, which is Roma Wines' presentation tonight of Suspense. Between the acts of Suspense, this is Truman Bradley for Roma Wines. Mention the name Elsa Maxwell, and you picture a famous hostess. Mention a meal featuring fish or fowl, and Elsa Maxwell pictures, but let's hear it in her own words.
The thought of a piping hot fish or chicken dinner naturally calls up for me the picture of glasses of chilled Roma California Sauterne at each plate. Roma Sauterne is delicate, pale gold in color, delightful in bouquet, and even more important, exquisite in taste. However, you need not wait for a chicken or fish dinner to serve good Roma Sauterne. It goes perfectly with any food. The one important thing to remember is the name, Roma.
Each glassful of golden Roma Sauterne reflects the heritage of all Roma wines. Flavorful grapes from California's choicest vineyards, gently pressed, then carefully guided with the ancient skill of Roma wineries to the full goodness you enjoy in every Roma wine. Roma wines do not vary, are always high in quality, yet they cost only pennies a glass. No wonder more Americans enjoy Roma than any other wine. R-O-M-A, Roma Wines. Now it is with pleasure that we welcome back to our Hollywood soundstage Mr. Herbert Marshall, who, as Richard Sampson in My Own Murderer, continues a narrative well calculated to keep you in suspense.
Should Alan Rennick prove to be my own murderer, as well as Baines's, this document will serve as his death warrant. If not, well, I shall make good use of it anyhow. This, then, is what I decided to do. I was to keep Alan Rennick and hide him where he was, in my flat. I had a plan for effecting his escape, but it was more than a month before I had an opportunity to start it in motion. It came quite unexpectedly in the course of my almost daily visits to the Old Bailey. An insurance case preceded mine on the court docket, and I was forced to wait while a revolting red-headed doctor rambled on with his testimony. That red hair of his really fascinated me. But not as much as his medical bag, which lay on the bench before me.
Well, thank you very much, Doctor.
But when he stepped down from the box, I was already on my way out of the courtroom.
Hey, stop that man. He's stolen my bag.
What's this? What's the trouble, Doctor?
That man, the one with the tortoise-shell glasses, he's made off with my kit.
What did you say he took?
A black leather bag, you know the type, with my name on it.
Well, I'm afraid he's lost in the crowd by this time, sir. But if your name's on it, could you identify him if you saw him again?
Well, of course I could. He had on tortoise-shell glasses, and he had a bad mastoid scar right under his right ear.
All the time he was talking to the policeman, I was standing not more than 5 paces away, lost among the curious crowd that had collected about them. I left the room with the crowd and hailed a cab. When I'd taken what I needed from his bag, I threw it with its remaining contents into the ever-useful Regent's Canal. Its owner's name stamped on the outer side of it was as revolting as his red hair. Jeremiah Bloggins. Jeremiah Bloggins. Now my plan for Alan's escape swung into motion. Our chief accomplice was a woman friend of Alan's named Margaret Farley, whom I knew to be one of the most intelligent of his acquaintances.
Hello, Dick. Where's Alan?
It's all right, Alan. You can come out now.
Well, it's high time. Hello, Margaret.
Alan. Oh, Alan, my poor darling.
Long time no see. But you're still the prettiest girl in London.
Look, I'm sorry to interrupt this touching little scene, but there's not too much time. Shall we discuss our plan?
Well, yes, of course.
Well, in essence, this is it. Alan's going to die.
What do you mean by that?
I say, isn't that rather extreme?
Not literally, of course. The point is to arrange a bogus death of some sort. To get you declared legally dead, and then you'll assume another identity.
Well, that has possibilities, but what about the body?
Well, I'm afraid I'm forced back on the old expedient of the suicide note. The clothes left on the riverbank, and the body that's never recovered. Later on, you're declared legally dead. It's a very old plan.
And rather unlikely to deceive the police for that reason. Don't you think, old boy?
Oh, we'll admit later on, if necessary, that it was a put-up job.
What's the good of that?
Don't you see? If the police ask too many questions, Miss Farley here will admit being a party to a bogus suicide. But stick to her story that you really drowned by misadventure while trying to carry out your plan.
I think it has possibilities, Alan.
Where is this Hellespont that I'm supposed to swim?
Well, I've been studying maps of the English coastline. We should choose the mouth of a river where the tidal currents are strong enough to sweep a body out to sea. Not too broad a channel, so they can be easily swum when the tide's at low ebb, and not too near a town or village, so there'll be no unwanted witnesses.
So I grow a beard, swim the river, put on a different clothes, and become, Jeremiah Bloggins or somebody for the rest of my life.
What? How did you happen to mention that name?
Jeremiah Bloggins? Oh, why not? Good a name as any. Don't you think so, Margaret?
I don't think this is quite the time for facetiousness, Alan.
Well, all right. So I become Jeremiah Bloggins. That's better than hanging. But what will Jeremiah Bloggins do for money?
Well, you could make out a will in favor of Margaret here, or...
I suppose I can depend on you to make things stick legally.
Well, I'm putting myself in a position where you could easily blackmail me if I didn't.
He has a point there, Alan.
Now, we'll need another confederate. Somebody to look after when you get to the other shore. We could leave a car there, of course, but the effect of the cold water... Well, I think it's safer to have somebody waiting for you. On the other side.
Who will it be?
That actress friend of Alan's, Anita Kilner.
That woman? Oh, how can you suggest such a thing?
Oh, come now, Margaret. It's true that Anita's a fool and rather a tiresome one. I don't know whether Dick told you, but her letters got me into this mess. Baines was trying to blackmail me for them, and that's why I killed him. Dick's right. I need someone, and I can trust Anita. Because of those letters, if for no other reason.
Heavens, what a scheme. Everybody's in a position to blackmail everybody else.
Yes, that had already occurred to me. That's exactly why this plan can't possibly fail. The river mouth we finally hit upon was near Mudeford. It was Margaret Farley's choice, and it was a good one. Still, I was afraid to trust everything to her. So I decided to drive Alan down there and to leave as soon as I saw him safely in the water. Margaret Farley was to meet us there. Anita would be waiting on the other bank. It was at times a revolting journey down to Mudeford that night.
The trouble with you, Dick, is that you like managing people. Mark my words, one day I shall be a free man again. And then I shall try and repay you for some of the things you've made me put up with. Cleaning up after you, making me say, yes, Dick, certainly, Dick, of course, Dick.
I suppose it's quite useless to point out to you that what I did was not only for your own good, but absolutely necessary. Incidentally, I shouldn't be smoking quite so much if I were you. You've got to do some swimming tonight, remember, and you're hopelessly out of condition.
How I should like to give you just one on the jaw.
Just one? 7 is your usual number, isn't it? Isn't that what it took to kill Baines?
You unutterable swine. If you weren't driving the car, I'd give you something to remember me by.
I shan't forget you easily as it is.
Oh, well, forget what I said. Come on, Edgins. It's a devil of a cold night, too. Did you bring that black coffee as I asked you to? Where's the thermos?
There on the back seat. Help yourself.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Filthy coffee. I should have made it myself.
Better save a little for just before you go into the water.
Margaret's bound to have brought some, too. I'll just finish this off. No. Well, bad as it tastes, it's making me feel a lot better.
I thought you'd never come. Oh, Alan, you poor boy, we would pick the coldest night in the year.
Oh, nonsense. I feel marvelous, marvelous.
Well, I brought you some hot coffee. It's here in this thermos.
Better save it for just before I dive in. Well, come along. Let's get going.
Oh, I wish he wouldn't rush things so. He'll wear himself out before he gets in the water.
If I know Alan, he's whistling past the cemetery. Hope he doesn't lose his nerve at the last moment. If he does...
You mustn't imply things like that about Alan. Besides, I don't know that I could bring myself actually to push it.
You must. You know what he is, and tonight he's especially difficult.
All right. I'll do whatever seems necessary.
I don't know what's come over me. I feel positively numb. Really, it's much too cold. Hadn't we better try it another night?
Now, Alan.
I can't, Margaret. I'm afraid it's too cold.
Here's the thermos. Here, drink this, darling. It'll warm you up.
Oh, filthy.
Now, go on, drink it up.
There. Well, I feel terrible. I've never been so cold in my life.
Now, go on, Alan. Be brave. You were always that.
Now, look, Dolly. Really. No, don't. No, please. No, please.
Yes?
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
It's Anita.
Oh, yes?
I'm calling from the inn near Mutford. I waited all night, but Alan never showed up.
Are you sure you waited to the right spot?
Of course I did. Do you think he didn't get across?
I don't see why not. It was even narrower than I expected. I could have swum it myself. Now, look. You better go on home and act as if you hadn't been away, and don't telephone me again. I'll let you know the moment I hear from him. Followed day with no word from Alan. I had no alternative but to assume that he had drowned there in the estuary that night. The body had not been found, but then we had deliberately chosen a place where the tides could be alleged to have carried it out to sea. The uncertainty was a little distressing. I had not forgotten his threat to come back and even scores with me once he got free. And tonight came an unpleasant little scene to not help my frame of mind. It began with Anita.
I know you're angry at me for coming in, Mrs. Sampson, but I've simply got to talk to someone.
Well, you ought not to come here. It isn't safe.
Safe? You're a nice one to talk about safety. Do you think Alan's safe now?
I don't know.
And I don't believe you care. Trusted you, you've let him down. Oh, why did he ever trust himself to a brute like you? You and your plans and your cleverness. Where are they all now? And you sit back contented with what you've done.
If I may interrupt your panegyric for a moment, Anita, I'd better answer that.
You listen to me first.
Oh, well, we shall see about that.
Well, it seems to be a gathering of the clan.
Oh, it's you, Mrs. Farley. I want to talk to you, too.
So you missed him?
He didn't come. I did my part. Did you do yours?
I did my best. But I don't know. I ought never to have let him go, considering how cold and miserable he was. I ought to have stopped him.
And why didn't you? Because you had a preconceived idea put into your head by this conniving brute of an attorney. He planned it all. And now he isn't going to turn a hand to find Alan and help him if he needs it. Because it might jeopardize his filthy little law practice. Well, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to the police and tell them the whole story.
Has it occurred to you that the police cannot possibly help anyone in this case and may possibly harm all three of us? And if Alan is alive, you inevitably do him harm.
Yes, he's right. I pushed him in. I
pretty man.
Don't be morbid. You did what you could with excellent intentions. Are you going to clear your conscience by getting two other people into trouble? Are you, Anita?
Well, I confess I'm not too keen on helping Margaret to be a martyr for Alan.
How dare you? It was you and your hysterical letters that got Ellen into this mess.
And wouldn't it be ironic if they ended up by being published anyway? That would be a fine tribute to Alan's sacrifice. Especially if he's dead and gone.
What are you driving at?
I have those letters. I'm not going to demand a price for them like Baines, but at the same time...
You dirty blackmailer.
I'm merely forcing you to do something for your own good. Just like giving a patient morphia to prevent him from doing an injury to himself.
Morphia?
A figure of speech, but I think you understand what I mean.
Morphia.
After the women had gone, I thought over the conversation, particularly that part of it in which Margaret Farley repeated the word morphia. I think she knows. But even if Alan's body is recovered and they find what he really died of, they can never make an accusation. They have to prove possession of the morphia. And no one in the world can do that. I meant to call Anita Kilner and sound her out. But I'd find that I don't even know her married name. Not that it matters, considering what went on with Alan behind her husband's back. In any case, I can depend on her letters to keep her mouth shut. On reading this over, I find that in my marshalling of the facts in this case, I have omitted one possibility. Far-fetched, it's true. But there is one person whom I should set about finding if I were acting for the Crown in this case. I refer to that abominable, truculent, red-headed doctor with the ridiculous name.
Yes, Mr. Sachs.
I'm leaving the office for the day, Chatsworth. Will you put these files in my briefcase?
Yes, sir.
And will you get out Rennick's file? His will goes into probate tomorrow, and I want to study it at home tonight.
Yes, sir. Oh, by the way, that gentleman is still waiting in the outer office, sir.
What gentleman?
Oh, I must have forgotten to tell you. He came in with a lady just a moment ago. Dr. Bloggins.
Bloggins?
Jeremiah Bloggins. Peculiar name, isn't it? Beg pardon if he's a friend of yours, sir.
No, not especially. Did you say I was in?
Yes, I'm afraid I did.
Chatsworth, if you ever become a solicitor, be sure your office has 2 entrances.
Shall I send him away, sir?
Jeremiah Bloggins. I dare say he'd be unpleasantly persistent. Better let him come in.
Yes, sir. Will you be needing me, Mr. Sampson?
Yes. You better sit down. I want you to take down a statement.
Yes. Will you come in, please?
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Sampson. I want you to meet...
Dr. Bloggins. Yes, we met before.
What?
Strange you should have been the one to bring this about, Anita. I always thought Margaret Farley the cleverer one. Or should I speak so frankly?
Dr. Bloggins knows everything, Mr. Sampson.
Yes, I know. But just for the record, are you ready to take down that statement, Chetwood?
Yes, Mr. Sampson.
Very well. I murdered Alan Rennick.
Just a moment, Mr.
Please
Sampson.
don't interrupt. Yes, I murdered him. And why not? He was a killer. He forced himself on me and turned himself into my private property. He might indeed be called my own murderer. My motive? Well, perhaps one day the world will learn that the strongest compulsion to murder is hatred. I hated Alan Rennick. And I planned his murder brilliantly. I had counted on the sea holding Rennick long enough for the traces of morphia to have gone. I really cannot be responsible for the treachery of the elements. Only one man had the evidence to convict me, and the odds against his being found and brought face to face with me were so slight that I would risk it again. I'm not sorry that I killed him. Even now I am able to say that it has been a great adventure, requiring courage and daring beyond Rennick's wildest imagination. I have proved which of us was the better man. Do you have all that, Chatsworth?
Yes, sir.
Oh, add this note at the bottom. In view of the customary bumbling and obtuseness of the Crown Prosecutor, it'll be probably necessary to state that his case will be greatly facilitated by calling as his first witness Dr. Jeremiah Bloggin.
Look here, perhaps I'm obtuse, but why on earth are you trying to involve me in your beastly murder?
Huh? Do you mean to say you don't recognize me?
Why, no. Why should I?
Anita, why did you bring this man here?
I thought you knew. He's my husband. After Alan's body was found, I decided to tell him everything. We simply came here to get the letters.
And you don't even remember me? When your bag was stolen while you were testifying at the Old Bailey?
Well, so you're the blighter who did that. Good heavens. That's where you got the morphia. Out of my bag.
Yes, I suppose I could get you held as accessory after the fact. But that would only confuse the Crown Prosecutor. Oh, well, on the whole, I'm rather glad it worked out this way. After all, as Nanki Poo says in the Mikado, there's much to be said for the advantage of having it done by the public executioner.
And so closes My Own Murderer, in which Roma Wines have brought you as star Herbert Marshall with Norman Lloyd in tonight's study in Suspense. Suspense is produced, edited, and directed by William Spear.
Before Mr. Marshall returns to the microphone, let me say a word for Roma Wines, the sponsor of Suspense. Few hostesses have entertained as extensively, as often, as the world-renowned hostess, Miss Elsa Maxwell. That's why her words are significant.
Back in the horse and buggy days, wine serving was surrounded by all manner of do's and don'ts. Today, it's fashionable to serve delicious Roma wines whenever and however you choose. For example, delicious, versatile Roma California Tokay is a light, moderately sweet, flame-colored wine that goes well before or after meals, during cocktail hour, actually delightful at any time. Serve your Roma Tokay cool.
While Roma Tokay differs in flavor from other Roma wines, it is like them in these respects. Always delicious, never varying in fine quality. And since Roma wines cost only pennies a glass, you can serve them often. Remember, more Americans enjoy Roma than any other wine. And the next time you use vermouth, choose Roma vermouth. Zestful, full-flavored Roma vermouth is blended and developed with all the traditional winemaking skill of Roma wineries, is made and bottled in the heart of California's famous vineyards, yet surprisingly low-priced. Try Roma vermouth soon, won't you?
This is Herbert Marshall. It's been a great pleasure, as always, to make an appearance on Suspense, a show which is such a very great favorite with all of us. Mr. Spear has just been telling me about next Thursday's broadcast, and it sounds like one of the very finest of the year. It's a very wonderful story by W.F. Harvey, August Heat. And in it, as your star, will be Ronald Colman. Now, if you'll permit a most important word. War news from the Pacific is encouraging. We're on our way to Tokyo. But until Japan is beaten to her knees, the war goes on. It takes dollars to buy the equipment our men need. Your dollars. And by investing those dollars in war bonds now during the 7th War Loan Drive, you help your country and help yourself to greater post-war purchasing power. Get extra bonds. Big ones. During the mighty 7th.
Next Thursday, same time, Mr. Ronald Colman will be your star of Suspense.
Presented by Roma Wines, R-O-M-A, made in California for enjoyment throughout the world. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Roma Wines bring you the distinguished actor, Mr. Ronald Colman, in one of the great suspense stories of our time, August Heat.
Penistone Road, Clapham, August the 20th, 1945. I have had what I believe to be the most remarkable day in my life. And while the events are still fresh in my mind, I wish to put them down on paper as clearly as possible. Let me say at the outset that my name is James Clarence Withencroft. You must remember that in order to have the full implication of my story. James Clarence Withencroft. I'm 40 years old, in perfect health, never having known a day's illness. By profession, I am an artist. Not a very successful one, but I earn enough money by my black and white work to satisfy my necessary wants. My only near relative, a sister, died 5 years ago, so that there is no one in particular to whom I address this manuscript. Only you, who might by chance read it someday. For, because of the peculiar circumstance about which you will soon hear, I have the strong premonition that I shall never live to tell anyone about it. I breakfasted this morning at 9 at the usual time. It was no different from any other morning. And after glancing through the morning paper, I lighted my pipe. And I proceeded to let my mind wander, in the hope that I might chance upon some subject for my pencil. The room, though door and window were open, was oppressively hot. And I had just made up my mind that the coolest and most comfortable place in the neighborhood would be the deep end of the public swimming bath, when I was suddenly shaken. A feeling swept over me such as I had never experienced before. I attempted to rise to my feet, but somehow it seemed as though I had suddenly been fastened to my chair. My hand went out in an effort to brace myself. And then, before I knew what I was doing, my pencil was in my hand, and I began to draw. It was as though someone had taken my hand and was moving it across the paper, swiftly, in bold strokes. And then I seemed to take over. My hand, under its own power, began to draw. I soon forgot the oppressive heat. Everything was forgotten in this frantic feeling that the sketch must be finished as soon as possible. I had no idea how long I worked until I heard the clock of St. Jude's in the distance. It was 4 o'clock, and I had started just after breakfast. Now, for the first time since I'd begun, I actually seemed to see what I had been sketching. I was surprised. The final result was, I felt sure, the best thing I'd ever done. It showed a criminal in the dock immediately after the judge had pronounced sentence. The man was fat, enormously fat. The flesh hung in rolls about his chin. It creased his huge, stumpy neck. He was clean-shaven, or perhaps I should say a few days before he must have been clean-shaven. And he was almost bald. He stood there before the judge, his short, clumsy fingers clasping the rail, looking straight in front of him. The feeling that his expression conveyed was not so much one of horror as of utter, absolute collapse. There seemed nothing in the man strong enough to sustain that mountain of flesh. And then I saw that the sketch wasn't complete, for the man's other hand seemed to be clutching an instrument of some kind, a weapon, but it hadn't been completed. I had made this sketch, and yet I had no recollection of what I'd intended the man to carry in his other hand. I took up my pencil again, and I attempted to fill in the fuzzy outline, but it was useless. It was as though my fingers had suddenly turned to lead. I sat down, and I felt the moisture slowly forming on my forehead. And once again, I was conscious of the oppressive heat. Then I knew that there would be no finishing of the sketch, at any rate not for the moment. So I rolled it up, and without quite knowing why, I put it in my pocket. In spite of my peculiar inspiration, I was filled with a rare sense of happiness which the knowledge of a good thing well done gives. I believe that I set out with the idea of calling upon Trenton, for I remember walking along Lytton Street and turning to the right along Gilchrist Road at the bottom of the hill where the men are at work on the new tram line. From there onwards, I have only the vaguest recollection of where I went. Through parks, along crowded streets, always conscious of the awful heat that came up from the dusty asphalt pavement in a suffocating wave. Hollow sound of my footsteps as I moved along. Although walking aimlessly, I somehow knew that there was a goal, a something to which I was drawn. I longed for the thunder promised by the great banks of copper-colored clouds that hung low over the western sky. I've really no idea how far I walked when a small boy roused me from my abstraction.
You got the time, mister?
20 minutes to 7.
Thanks. Old enough for you, sir?
Yes. When he left me, I began to take stock of my bearings. I found myself standing before a gate that led into a yard bordered by a strip of thirsty earth. There were flowers, purple-stocked and scarlet geranium, and great numbers of bees droned over them. I stood looking down at them for a moment, and then, for some reason, I looked up. Over the entrance to the place, there was a board with the inscription, Charles Atkinson, Monumental Mason, Worker in English and Italian marbles. From the yard itself came a cheery whistle, the noise of hammer blows and the cold sound of steel meeting stone. A sudden impulse made me enter, and I went in the direction of the noise. There was a man, sitting with his back towards me. He was busy at work on a slab of curiously veined marble. Then, without turning, his hammer stopped in midair as he was about to bring it down on his chisel. He held this position a moment before turning, but I knew that he was aware of my presence, and when he turned, I saw his face. It was, although I'd never seen him before, it was the face of the man I had been drawing. Yes, it was the face of the man whose sketch was in my pocket. He sat there on his low stool, huge and elephantine, the sweat pouring from his scalp, not speaking. Then he took a red silk handkerchief and he mopped his brow. Although this face that looked up at me was the same as my sketch, the expression was absolutely different. Suddenly the puzzled expression left his face, and he smiled. as if we were old friends. And he walked over and he took my hand.
Good day, sir.
Good day. I'm sorry to intrude.
Not at all.
Everything is so hot and glary outside. This is like an oasis in the wilderness.
I don't know about an oasis, but it certainly is hot. Whew. Take a seat, sir.
He pointed to the end of the gravestone on which he was at work, and I sat down.
Very hot.
It's a beautiful piece of stone you've got hold of.
In a way it is. The surface here is as fine as anything you could wish. But there's a big flaw at the back. Oh, I don't expect you'd notice it.
Oh, I shouldn't think so.
I could never really do a good job on a bit of marble like that. It would be all right in the summer like this. Wouldn't mind the blasted heat. But wait until the winter comes.
Winter?
There's nothing quite like frost to find out the weak points in stone.
Oh.
A gravestone, you see.
Oh, I see. Then what's this one for?
You'd hardly believe if I was to tell you, but it's for exhibition. It's the truth. Artists have exhibitions, so do grocers and butchers. Oh, we have them too. All the latest little things in headstones, you know.
He went on to talk of marbles, which sort of marble best withstood wind and rain, and which were easiest to work. Then of his garden and some new sort of carnation he had bought. At the end of every other minute, he would drop his tools, wipe his shining head.
This heat's bad. A man's not responsible for what he does in this heat.
I said little, for I felt uneasy. There was something unnatural, uncanny in all of this, the feeling that I'd experienced it all before. The oppressive heat, the fragrance of the stuffs in the air, the conversation about the marble, the flowers, everything as though I had experienced it before. And yet I knew that I'd never ever been in this section of town before. I tried to persuade myself that at least I'd seen him before, that his face, unknown to me, had found a place in some out-of-the-way corner of my memory. But I knew that I was practicing little more than a plausible piece of self-deception. As I sat there quietly, watching him, he looked up at me and he said,
There. What do you think of that?
He said it with an air of evident pride, of a job well done. I could sense that he was experiencing the same feeling I had experienced when I'd finished my sketch. Then he got up with a sigh of relief.
Hot, ain't it?
I was seated in such a position that I was unable to see his work. And for some reason, I didn't move. Suddenly, he began to read what he'd carved on the tombstone. He spoke deliberately and with a flat voice.
In the midst of life, we are in death. Born January 18, 1905.
I looked up at the start. This man had read my exact birth date.
He passed away very suddenly on August 20th, 1945.
That's today.
We usually use the present date on these exhibition stones.
Do you usually put a name on them, too?
Yes. Sacred to the memory of James Clarence Withencroft.
Shudder swept over me, and I sat there in silence. The sound of birds and crickets seemed loud in my ears as we stood there, looking at each other, saying nothing. And then he mopped his brow again.
Hot.
was finally able to speak. Where did you see that name?
Oh, I didn't see it anywhere. I wanted some name, and I put down the first that came into my head.
It's a strange coincidence, but it happens to be mine.
Huh? That's your name? You're James Clarence...
Withencroft. Yes.
Wow. And the dates?
I can only answer for the birth date. It's correct.
Oh. That's a rum go.
I made a sketch this morning of you.
Of me? But you've never seen me before.
No.
Oh.
I took my sketch from my pocket and I showed it to him. As he looked, the expression on his face altered until it became more and more like that of the man I had drawn.
And it was only the other day before that I told Maria there were no such things as ghosts.
Neither of us had seen a ghost, but I knew what he meant. Then I spoke to him. You probably heard my name someplace.
Yes. You must have seen me somewhere and forgotten it.
Yes.
Were you at Clacton-on-Sea last July?
No, I've never been to Clacton in my life.
Oh.
And we were silent for some time again. And we stood there looking at one another and at the two dates on the gravestone. And the birth one was right, and the other was today.
Well, come inside and have some supper.
His wife was a strange little woman who was pallid with the look of those who live their lives indoors. Her husband introduced me as a friend of his who was an artist, and he informed her that I was staying to supper. I spoke, making some comment that I hoped I wouldn't be an intrusion, and she looked up at me and she said,
You have a pleasing voice, Mr. Withencroft, and you're welcome in my home. I'm sorry Charles has not brought you here before.
Very little was said during the meal, and after the sardines and watercress had been removed, she walked over to a cupboard and she took down a thin black book, and as she handed it to me, she spoke.
Would you read aloud, Mr. Withencroft?
Puzzled, I looked down at the book which she'd opened and placed before me. It was a very tiny book. The Prophet, it was called, by an author unknown to me with a strange Eastern name, Khalil Gibran. And my eyes fell across the page, and suddenly I was reading aloud, as she'd asked me to. Then Almitra spoke, saying, we would ask now of death. And he said, you would know the secret of death. But how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl, whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day, cannot unveil the mystery of life. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depths of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dream, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling, that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling. For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tide, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountain top, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then shall you truly dance. When I looked up, Mr. Atkinson had gone. But his wife stood before me, and as she took the book, she spoke.
Thank you.
Then I went outside. And I found Atkinson sitting on the gravestone and smoking. He looked up at me.
Hot. Man's not responsible for what he might do in this heat. She never asked anyone to read aloud before.
And then we talked about the sketch again. He looked at it.
Likeness is me, all right. On trial.
You must excuse my asking, but do you know of anything you've done for which you could be put on trial?
No, I've done nothing. Not yet.
He got up, fetched a can from the porch, and he began to water the flowers.
Twice a day regular in the hot weather. And then the heat sometimes gets the better of the delicate ones. And thirst. Good Lord, they could never stand it. Where do you live?
I told him my address. It would take an hour's quick walk to get back home. And he stopped watering, and he faced me squarely.
It's like this. We'll look at the matter straight. If you both go back home tonight, you take your chance of accidents. A cart may run over you. There's always banana skins and orange peels, to say nothing of falling ladders.
He spoke of the improbable with an intense seriousness that would have been laughable 6 hours before. But I did not laugh.
The best thing we can do is for you to stay here till 12 o'clock. Then it'll be tomorrow, you see?
Yes.
We'll go upstairs and smoke. Maybe cooler inside.
And to my surprise, I agreed. We are sitting in a long, low room beneath the eaves. Atkinson has sent his wife to bed. He himself is busy sharpening some tools at a little oilstone, smoking one of my cigars the while. And as I look at my sketch before me, I suddenly see the fuzzy outline of what the man in the picture holds in his hands. But while I had not been able to sketch it before, I am able to do so now. It is a chisel, and it is stained with dark liquid. The sketch is completed now. The air seems charged with thunder, and I hear it in the distance. It is ominous, but it carries the hope of rain. And perhaps this damnable heat will be broken soon, and the day will soon be over. close to 12. I'm writing this at a shaky table before the open window. The leg is cracked. And Atkinson, who seems a handy man with his tools, is going to mend it as soon as he has finished putting an edge on his chisel. There. It is 12. The day is over. And I shall be going home. But the heat is stifling. This heat is enough to send a man mad.
The Roma Wine Company of Fresno, California presents
Suspense. Tonight, Roma Wines bring you a suspenseful play by Dashiell Hammett called Two Sharp Knives, and starring John Payne and Frank McHugh.
Suspense is presented for your enjoyment by Roma Wines. That's R-O-M-A. Roma Wines. Those excellent California wines that can add so much pleasantness to the way you live, to your happiness in entertaining guests, to your enjoyment of everyday meals. Yes, right now a glassful would be very pleasant, as Roma Wines bring you a remarkable tale of suspense.
And with the drama called Two Sharp Knives, and with the performances of Mr. John Payne as Scott Anderson and Mr. Frank McHugh as Wally Shane, Roma Wines hope indeed to keep you in suspense. Shortly after 2 a.m., a poker game was breaking up at Ben Camsley's, the doctor coroner of Deerwood City. Scott Anderson, Deerwood's efficient chief of police, and Wally Shane, his easygoing assistant, were just about to leave.
Oh, talk about thieves. Our own chief of police committed nothing less than larceny, the way he won that last part.
Yes. And having won it, I noticed he's losing no time in making off with the swag.
Why don't you boys just break down and admit you don't know how to play like old Professor Scott here?
What?
You couldn't win a poker hand if it was on a punch board.
Good thing he's chief of police.
Come on, Wally. Let's get out of here before these amateurs break my heart.
Okay, Scott. Anything you say. Where are we heading for, Chief?
Just across the street, Wally. Railroad station.
Oh, shucks. Aren't you afraid of the excitement? Don't you think that watching the 211 come in would have to be too much for your blood pressure?
Well, if it is, Wally, you can always carry on. You've been a fair imitation of an assistant to me for some time now.
Yeah?
Yeah. If anything happens to me, you'd be chief. Don't worry. It won't be any harder for you to fool the public as chief. Hi, Elmer.
Oh, howdy, Scotty. Well, hello, Wally boy.
Hi, Elmer.
Say, it's kind of late for you to be around, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know. We sort of figured we'd put the town to bed tonight.
Hmm?
How's the 211? On time?
Right on the nose, Wally, right on the nose. She ought to be blowing for the bend in just about 3 seconds now. By golly, she flew, Mrs. Early. That's her now. Why, are you expecting anyone on us, Scotty?
No, Elmer, I'm not expecting anyone.
Hmm?
Wally and I just thought we'd mosey over and watch you come in, that's all.
You know, Elmer, you can never tell who might get off, though. Jesse James or Jack the Ripper, or even your Aunt Gussie.
Yeah, I guess you're right, Wally. Well, here should be the party, Jesse. I gotta be rolling the wagon out to the base.
Yeah. Hey, Elmer. How's it going?
Oh, I can't complain. Cap.
Well, maybe you can, Elmer, but I sure can. You hold us up with that freight there. How much more?
No. This is the last piece now. Oh. Well, there you are, Cap. It's all done.
Okay, see you tomorrow, Elmer.
Hey, Scott. You see what I see? You mean do I see the man who just got off that train? The answer's yes.
Well, he's a ringer for the guy we got that circular about.
That is the guy.
Well, then, what do we do now?
We take him, Wally. Let's go.
Whatever you say, Scott. Here he comes, over toward the taxi stand.
Driver, I want to go to the Deerwood Hotel. Oh, never mind. I see the hotel sign just a few blocks down the street. Sorry. I'll walk.
Hello, Furman.
Oh, I don't believe I...
You're Lester Furman, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Philadelphia?
Yes.
I'm Scott Anderson, chief of police here in Deerwood.
What's happened to her?
Happened to who?
Oh, no, you don't. If you think you can pull that sort of stuff with me, you're very much mistaken.
Now, look.
Okay, Scott.
You silly...
Let me get a crack at that mother.
Wait a minute, gentlemen.
Hold it, Wally. Hold it up. Well, Furman.
I'm sorry for a moment there. I thought that you weren't really a policeman.
Thanks. Guess I look almost human in civvies.
Until I saw the other gentleman's uniform, I thought you were a hold-up man, Mr. Scott.
Then never mind the thanks.
It was silly of me. I'm sorry.
Well, let's get going before anything else happens.
Are you taking me to police headquarters?
Mm-hmm.
What for?
Philadelphia.
I don't think I understand.
You understand you're wanted in Philadelphia, don't you?
I'm wanted in Philadelphia?
Yeah. Got a cigarette?
Huh? Oh, yes, of course. Here you are. What am I wanted for?
Murder.
Here we are. Here's the circular on Lester Furman. It was sent out by the Trans-American Detective Agency in Philadelphia. $1,500 reward for the arrest and conviction of Lester Furman, alias Lloyd Fields, alias J.D. Carpenter, for the murder of Paul Frank Dunlap in Philadelphia on December the 8th, 1942.
Oh, no.
Take a look at it.
Well?
It's a lie.
You're Furman, aren't you?
Yes.
The photograph reproduced in the circular is a picture of you, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but I can't understand.
Here. You better sit down.
What we got here?
We got Lester Furman.
Oh, that Philadelphia. You lucky stiff. Now you and Wally spent $1.5 grand reward, though. Gee, I've never seen nothing like it. If it ain't vacations in New York at the city's expense, it's reward, Moolah.
George, someday, if you don't remember you're the jailer around here and not the DA, you're going to be wearing your teeth on the outside of your lip, and I'll be the guy who arranged it that way. You understand?
Oh, just because you caught a guy who's hot in Philadelphia.
It's a lie. I never killed anybody. I won't be framed.
Oh, shucks. Take it easy, Furman. Save it for the Philadelphia police. We're just holding you for them. If anything wrong, it's there, not here.
But it's not the police. It's the Trans-American Detective... Mr. Anderson, I suppose you're sure there's nothing I can do.
There's nothing anyone can do till morning. All right, George, you take Furman now and lock him up.
Come along, darling. You ain't had nobody in that little hoosegow for 3 days running. You'll have it all to yourself, just like a suite at the Ritz.
Well, good night, and thank you.
Make him as comfortable as you can, George. If he wants anything sent in, okay.
He's valuable, huh? Now, if some bum didn't mean a nickel to you, maybe I ought to take a pillow off my own bed for him. Nuts. He's just like the rest of them to me. Shut up.
Perhaps you forgot my remark about your teeth a while back, George. Any day now, I'm going to forget your uncle's county chairman and throw you back in the gutter just to see how high you'll bounce. Remember that. Do all the talking you want, but do what I tell you.
Oh, shucks, Scott. George don't mean nothing. He's just money mad.
Okay. I'm going home now. If it's anything urgent, I can be reached there. But I don't want to be disturbed unless it's urgent. Hello?
Scott, this is Wally.
Yeah, Wally? Oh, what time is it?
It's 5 after 6 in the morning, and you'd better come right down, Scott. That fellow Furman's hung himself.
What? Hung himself?
Gap by his belt from a window bar. Deader than a mackerel.
I'll be right in, Wally. Phone Ben Camsley. Tell him I'll pick him up on the way down.
Oh, shucks. No doctor's going to do Furman any good now.
Well, it won't hurt to have him looked at. You better phone the county court at Douglasville, too, and file a routine report.
Already did that. And what's more, hold on to your seat. The DA's on the way over. In person.
The DA? I'll be there before you hang up.
For Suspense, Roma Wines are bringing you as stars Mr. John Payne and Mr. Frank McHugh, whom you've heard in the first act of Two Sharp Knives by Dashiell Hammett, which is Roma Wines' presentation tonight of Suspense.
Between the acts of Suspense, this is Truman Bradley for Roma Wines. Elsa Maxwell, famed hostess, makes this suggestion for added mealtime enjoyment.
It's smart, yet simple, to dress up ordinary meals. For a festive note, spread your table with a brightly colored cloth, a centerpiece heaped with fresh fruits and nuts, a basket of crispy brown hot rolls, and at each plate, a glistening glassful of golden Roma Sauterne, well chilled.
A most welcome suggestion for Miss Maxwell. And as you enjoy Roma California Sauterne, you'll be delighted with the flavorful delicacy of this truly distinguished table wine. Like all Roma wines, Roma Sauterne is always unvaryingly good, the goodness of selected grapes, picked at the peak of perfection in sunny California's choicest vineyards, carefully pressed, the rich natural juices guided to perfection, unhurriedly, by the ancient wine skill of Roma's famed wineries. Good Roma wines never vary, are always enjoyable, yet cost only pennies a glass. Remember, because of uniformly fine quality at reasonable cost, more Americans enjoy Roma than any other wine. R-O-M-A, Roma wine.
And now, Roma Wines bring back to our soundstage John Payne as Scott Anderson, Deerwood City Chief of Police, and Frank McHugh as Assistant Chief Wally Shane in Two Sharp Knives, a play well calculated to keep you in suspense.
Come on in, Chief. Good old Ted Carroll, the DA's here. And he's plenty hot under the collar.
Yeah, what's he burning about?
Oh, he's just mad. He's run up quite a phone bill for us, too. Been calling Philadelphia every couple of minutes since he got here. What kept you so long?
I couldn't get my car started. Well, let's go in. Hello, Ted.
Listen, Scott, what is all this?
Oh, what?
This fiddly-dee, this hanky-panky.
I suppose you mean Furman. Wasn't it suicide?
Sure, it was suicide. I just telephoned Trans-American, dug a guy out of bed there. They phoned me just a few minutes ago and said they'd never sent out any circulars on Furman.
Oh?
They didn't want him for murder or anything else. All they knew about him was he used to be a client of theirs.
I don't know what to say, Ted.
I don't either. What on earth kept you so long, Scott?
Car stall. Came as quick as I could. Well, what makes you so edgy, Ted?
Oh, nothing. I guess it's just the district attorney in me.
Oh, shucks. Gents, if you're not careful, you're liable to give the impression that you two don't like each other.
Okay, Wally. I'll quit if he will. Tell me what's wrong, Ted.
Well, that's plenty wrong, Scott. Everything's wrong. First, that Trans-American thing. They never sent out any circulars about Furman. And now get this. I talked to the Philly police just before you came in. There wasn't any Paul Frank Dunlap murder down there that they know about. They've got no unexplained murder for December 8, 1942. What did you get out of Furman before you let him hang himself?
Only, well, that he was innocent.
Well, didn't you grill him? Didn't you find out what he was doing in town? Wally, didn't you?
Oh, shucks. What for? He admitted his name was Furman. The circular description fitted him. The photograph was him. Trans-American Detective Agency supposed to be on the level. Philadelphia wanted Furman. We didn't.
But, Scott...
Oh, sure, Ted, sure. If I'd known he was going to hang himself, but then if your aunt wore pants, she'd be your uncle. You said Furman had been a client of Trans-American. Then tell me what kind of a job they were doing for him.
Well, his wife left him a couple of years ago, and he had them hunting for 5 or 6 months. But they never found her. They're sending a man up here tonight to look things over.
Yeah, huh?
Yes. And I might as well tell you, Scott, they're going to raise plenty of trouble over this.
Yeah, I know that, Ted. There usually is trouble when somebody dies in a jail cell.
Chief Anderson?
Yeah, come in.
They told me I'd find you here. I'm Carl Rising, assistant manager of Trans-American Detective Agency in Philadelphia. This is Mr. Wheelock, who was Lester Furman's personal attorney.
How do you do? Glad to know you, Mr. Rising. Mr. Wheelock, this is Wally Shane, my assistant.
How are you? How do you do?
I know you gentlemen are already in possession of most of the details concerning Mr. Furman from the time he arrived in Deerwood until the time of his death. But perhaps you don't know that the police of most towns in our corner of the state have also received copies of this reward circular. Get it for him, will you, Wally?
There you are. Why, this circular is a forgery.
Wow. You're sure it's a forgery, Mr. Rising?
Oh, yes, there's no doubt about it. And it's an excellent forgery. The paper, style, and type are almost exactly like those we use at Transamerica. Almost, but not quite.
Wow, what do you know? A forgery.
Tell me, Mr. Wheelock, was Mr. Furman a native Philadelphian?
Oh, my, yes. He was well-known, respectable, prosperous citizen of Philadelphia.
Married, wasn't he?
In 1934, he married a 22-year-old girl named Ethel Bryan, daughter of a Philadelphia family.
And the Furmans had a child, isn't that right, Mr. Wheelock?
Yes, born in 1936. But the child lived only a few months. Mrs. Furman's wife disappeared after the child's death.
What year was it she disappeared?
Mr. Rising should remember that. His agency worked on that matter.
Yes, I remember it very well. Mrs. Furman disappeared in 1937. We never heard anything of her again, although Furman spent quite a lot of money trying to locate her.
Furman never divorced her, huh?
No, sir. Say not, he was very much in love with her. And he seemed to think that the kid's dying made her a little screwy so that she didn't know what she was doing. That's right, isn't it, Mr. Wheelock?
Well, that is my belief, Mr. Rising.
You said Furman had money, Mr. Wheelock. How much did he have, and who gets it?
I should say his estate will amount to perhaps $500,000 left in its entirety to his wife.
His wife, huh?
That's quite a handy sum for anyone to have, huh, Wally?
Yeah.
Tell me, do either of you know why Furman came to Deerwood?
No.
Oh, shucks. You're his attorney, Mr. Wheelock. Don't you know if he told his servants or his office employees or someone why he came here?
I know of no one of whom he told, and I can't see that these questions of yours are getting us anywhere. Why do you persist in asking them?
Because, Mr. Wheelock, everything shows that somebody framed Furman into the Deerwood jail. And that frame-up drove him to suicide. Nothing shows anything else. And there has to be something else. A lot else.
Well, Chief, what do we do now?
I'm going across the street to Fritz's undertaking parlor. Maybe I'll find something else there.
You find anything at the undertaking parlor, Scott?
No, not much.
Well, I was over there myself just after you left, and I did.
You did? What?
Well, I saw it.
Save it, Wally. Come in.
Hello. Am I bugging you into anything here?
Oh, shucks, no. You know the coroner's report is always welcome at a time like this, Doc?
What's on your mind, Doc?
Well, is it all right to talk here? I mean, can anyone hear us?
No, go ahead, talk.
Listen, Scott. 2 of those bruises showed.
What bruises?
Furman. Up under the hair, there were 2 bruises.
Why didn't you tell me?
I am telling you, Scott. You weren't here when I made my examination. You were off chasing some stick-up hoodlums. This is the first time I've seen you since then.
But why didn't you spill the stuff about Furman's bruises when you were testifying at the inquest, Ben?
I'm a friend of yours. Do I want to put you in a spot where people say you drove this fellow to suicide by third-degreeing him too rough?
Oh, shucks, Doc. You're nuts. How bad was Furman's head?
Well, that didn't kill him, if that's what you mean. There's nothing the matter with his skull, just a couple of bruises that nobody would notice unless they parted the hair.
It killed him just the same. You and your friendship that... Hello. Yeah, Fritz. Couple of ladies? Who are they? Oh, okay, I'll wait.
I've got to run along now, Scott.
Okay, I'll see you later.
Bye.
It's Fritz at the undertaking parlor. A couple of ladies want to see Furman's body. He's going to ask why.
That's what I was going to tell you, Scott. When I was over there, I saw it.
Hello. Oh. Are you one of the ladies who wants to see... You're Furman's wife. Mrs. Furman, Oh, then by all means, Miss Furman. Only when you're through over there, I want you to come over to my office. I've got some things I want to ask you. Right. Now, what do you know about that? Furman's wife.
That's what I've been trying to tell you. I saw him. And one of them's Hotshot Randall, a babe with a record as long as your arm. She's one of that mob you had me working on in New York last summer.
She know you?
Sure, but not by my right name. She thinks I'm a Detroit rum runner.
No, I mean, does she recognize you just now?
I don't think she saw me. Anyway, she didn't give me a tumble.
Okay, Wally, stick around a while, but stay out of sight. Maybe I'll be bringing these dolls back with me.
Whatever you say, Chief.
Come in.
Chief Anderson?
That's right. Mrs. Furman?
Yes. This is my friend, Mrs. Crowder.
Mrs. Crowder. Thought your name was Randall.
What do you care, Chief? I'm not hurting your town any.
Okay. Now, before anybody says anything, I want to tell you something. Furman didn't commit suicide. He was murdered.
Murder? My husband murdered?
We got alibis. We were in New York. We can prove it.
You're likely to get a chance. How'd your people happen to come down here?
Murdered.
Who's got a better right to come down here? She was still his wife, wasn't she? She's got a right to look out for her own interests, hasn't she?
Yeah, that reminds me of something. Excuse me just a second. I gotta make a phone call in the next room.
Oh, no. Take it easy.
Hey, Hamill.
Yeah, Chief?
I want you to have someone get hold of that lawyer, Wheelock, before he leaves town and tell him I want to see him. And is Wally around?
No, he's not here. He said you told him to keep out of sight. I'll find him for you, though.
Right. Tell Wally I want him to go to New York tonight. Send Mason home to get some sleep. He'll have to take over Wally's night trick.
Okay.
Mr. Anderson, do you think that I had anything to do with with his death?
I don't know, Mrs. Furman. I know he was killed. I also know he left something like $500,000.
Dollars?
Dollars.
All right, Chief. Now, don't be a clown. The kid here didn't have a thing to do with whatever you think happened.
No?
No. We read about Lester Furman committing suicide in yesterday morning's paper. And about there being something funny about it. And I persuaded her she ought to come down to Deerwood and that's
Mr. Anderson, I wouldn't have done anything to hurt Lester. I left him because I wanted to leave him, but I wouldn't have done anything to him for money or anything else. If I'd wanted money from him, all I'd had to do would have been to just ask him for it.
That's so.
Well, he used to put ads in the paper telling me if I wanted anything to let him know, but I never did. You can ask his lawyer, Mr. Wheelock. Anybody who knew anything about it can tell you that.
Yeah, that's the truth, Chief. For years I've been telling Ethel she was a chump not to tap him, but she never would. I had a hard enough time getting her to come for her share, now that he's dead and got nobody else to leave it to.
I wouldn't have hurt him.
Why did you leave him then?
Well, after the baby died, I just...
Hey, excuse me. Oh, yeah, Hamill. You gave Wally the message. Yeah, I want him to go to New York tonight. Okay, where is he, home? He is home, Okay, thanks. This circular's what got your husband in the jug, Mr. Furman. Did you ever see that picture before?
No, that... It can't be. It's the snapshot I have. It's an enlargement of it.
Who else has one?
No, nobody that I know of. I don't think anybody else could have one.
Have you still got yours?
Yes, I don't remember whether I've seen it recently. It's with some old papers and things, but I must have it.
Well, Mrs. Furman, it's stuff like this that's got to be checked up. Neither one of us can dodge it. Now, there's two ways we can play.
Yes?
I can hold you here on suspicion till I've had time to check things up. Or I can send one of my men back to New York with you for the checkup. I'm willing to do that if you'll speed things up by helping them all you can. And if you'll promise me you won't try any tricks.
I promise I'm as anxious as you are to track this down.
All right. How'd you come down?
We drove. That's my car, the big green one across the street.
Fine. Then my man can ride back with you. But no funny business.
Funny, shummy. What do you expect, huh?
Huh? Oh, send him in. Hello, Mr. Wheelock. Is this really Mrs. Furman?
Yes, that's really her, all right. How do
Fine.
you do?
You wait here, Wheelock. I'll be back in a little while. Come on, girls.
Where are we going?
We're going to solve a murder, sister.
Who lives here?
Wally Shane, my assistant. He's the man who's going to drive you to New York tonight. All right? Here we are. Wally?
Who is it?
Scott, Wally.
Oh, come in.
Ladies first.
Harry.
Hello, Ethel.
You two know each other, huh?
Well, shucks. We just sort of...
Don't reach for that gun, Wally. I've got you covered.
I guess you win, Scott.
I guess I do. Why didn't you get out of town, Wally?
No, it's Harry.
You must have known when you saw these two women.
I did. But when Hamill phoned and said you were going to send me to New York, I figured I was getting a break. You fooled me plenty on that one, Scott.
Yeah. You going to come along nice and quiet, Wally?
Oh, shucks. Why not?
Okay. And I'm afraid I've got to say it. Walter Shane, I arrest you for the murder of Lester Furman. You, comfortable in here, Wally?
Can't complain. For a cell. Say, Scott. You didn't just stumble on all this, did you?
Nope. Furman had to be murdered by a copper. Only a copper with no reward circulars well enough to make a good job of forging one. Only a copper, one of my coppers, would be able to walk into Furman's cell, bang him across the head, and string him up. When you told me you knew the Randall woman, well, there it was. What got you like this, Wally?
Oh, shucks. What gets most saps into jams? Again, for easy dough. I'm in New York, see, Scott? Working on that Dutton job for you. Then I run into this Ethel Furman, and she goes for me like a house afire. Like her, too, so that's dandy. But one night she tells me about how much dough her husband's got, and how it would all come to her if... Well, I got to thinking.
Thinking what?
I think she's nuts enough about me to marry me. I still think she'd marry me if she didn't know I killed him. So anyway, I did it. I swiped that snapshot. I sent those circulars out. To a lot of places, you know, not wanting to point too much to this one. And when I was ready, I phoned Furman and I told him to come to the Deerwood Hotel that night, and sometime before the next night he'd hear from his wife, Ethel. I knew he'd fall for any trap that was baited with her. Oh, shucks. I guess I'm not as sharp as I thought I was.
Maybe you are, Wally, but that doesn't always help. Old man Camsley, Ben's father, used to have a saying. To a sharp knife comes a tough steak. I'm sorry you did it, Wally. I always liked you.
I know you did. I was counting on that too, Scott. But... Oh, shucks.
So closes Two Sharp Knives, in which Roma Wines have brought you John Payne and Frank McHugh as stars of tonight's study in Suspense. Suspense is produced, edited, and directed by William Spear.
Before our stars return to the microphone, let me say a word for Roma Wines, the sponsor of Suspense. Elsa Maxwell, noted authority on smart entertaining, has this suggestion.
When the thermometer rises, it's time for cooling, refreshing drinks. Enjoy the taste thrill of frosty cold, thirst-quenching Roma refreshers. A Roma Sherry Cobbler is a gay and colorful drink, simple to prepare with distinguished Roma California Sherry.
Miss Maxwell has an excellent idea there. And America's smartest drink, the Roma Sherry Cobbler, takes but a jiffy to prepare. Here is how. In a tall glass, dissolve 1/2 teaspoonful sugar in 2 tablespoons lemon juice. Half fill the glass with delicious Roma Sherry. Add ice to fill, stir well, and you have the most delightful summer refresher you've ever tasted. You know, June is the month of weddings and anniversaries. And the most distinguished way to honor this year's and yesteryear's June bride is by serving delicious Roma California champagne. Its delightful pale gold color, distinctive dryness, tell you that here is a truly fine champagne. Roma champagne. No better way to say happy days ahead than with Roma champagne.
This is John Payne. I'm sure I speak for Mr. McHugh, too, in saying how delighted we have been to be invited to appear on Suspense. Before Mr. McHugh brings you a message from our government, I would like to pass along to you the billboard for next Thursday's half hour of Suspense. It will star that polished and sinister actor, Clifton Webb, in a radio play based on John Dixon Carr's novel, The Burning Court. Okay, Frank, take over.
The Battle of the Pacific has moved into high gear. Our fighting men are doing more than their share in this big second half of our fight for victory. The current 7th War Loan Drive is an opportunity for you to do your share. The money you invest in war bonds now will increase in value. Will be your ready cash for tomorrow. Buy those extra war bonds today.
John Payne will soon be seen in the 20th Century Fox Technicolor production, The Dolly Sisters. Frank McHugh can soon be seen in State Fair from the same studio. Next Thursday, same time, Mr. Clifton Webb will be your star of Suspense.
Presented by Roma Wines. R-O-M-A. Made in California for enjoyment throughout the world. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.